Over the next about 45 minutes to an hour, we're going to cover a lot. The first thing I want you to know is that there will be time at the end for questions as we go through this. If you have any questions, if you have any concerns, anything of that nature, just write them down, let me know. And then at the end, like I said, we will be able to go over some questions. So I'm going to be showing you how to make the banks your best friends. And this is something that we do every single day. I have been in this industry for almost a decade. To date, we funded over $166.5 million with over 50 million within the last 2 years, right? So I'm not going to tell you something that I think is possible. I'm going to tell you something we do every single day. And ultimately, our understanding is that this is a process, right? A lot of people come to me, hey, Dorsey, I want 50,000, I want 100,000, I want $1 million. Absolutely possible if you qualify for it, right? And so that's what I'm going to be showing you today, how to actually put yourself in position to qualify for the capital that you're looking for. So that's what we're going to be teaching you today. Now, as always, this is great general information, but out of all my years doing this, out of the thousands of files we looked at, of the tens of thousands of business we have analyzed, there has never been one funding deal that is the exact same. So with that being said, I do have a disclaimer. This is great general information, but the specifics to your situation is going to vary this process, right? So it's very important that you take these notes and you learn this process, but you will need to consult with someone qualified in order to discuss your specific situation and understand nothing in the funding process can be assumed. Everything comes down to a very, very particular process, right? So now that that's out the way, I'm going to teach you all about how to get access to funding. Now, before we begin, I do want to cover a couple things because I want you to understand that you can be in a position to access capital. Right now, if you feel overwhelmed, it's normal. It's okay, right? There's a lot of information, there's a lot of posts, there's a lot of things out there in this world in order to try to figure out funding. But if you don't know the process, I understand because I was there before trying to, figure this out. So I want you to understand, if you're currently overwhelmed, if you currently have no idea what to do, that's perfectly okay. And that's ultimately what we are going to do today, is really give you a step-by-step process to put yourself in the position. Now, the other thing is you don't have to be an expert. All you have to do is just follow the process with me. And if you follow this process and if you duplicate this process to a T, I assure you, you will know how to put yourself in position to get funding. Now, the other thing here, just kind of going back to what I was talking about a second ago, out of all my years doing this, there has never been one funding deal that is the exact same. And ultimately, in this industry, we can never give guarantees. So everything that we talk about this is we're going to talk about pre-qualified, and we're going to be talking about ranges for what you can understand to qualify for, right? And then most importantly, I want you to be able to use this information to take action. You're going to get very actionable, simple, detailed information, and I want you to be able to use that and ultimately be able to use it immediately, right? That's everything that we are about. So now that that's out the way, now let's talk about what you're going to learn. There's really going to be four things we're going to talk about today in order for you to figure out your first steps to get funded, right? Number one, everything in funding is really about risk, right? It's being able to calculate risk for the lender. So the number one thing we are going to learn today is how do banks actually judge or underwrite risk, and how can you put yourself in a favorable position so that you look like a credible applicant, right? That's number one. Number two is it's not necessarily about where you start, but it's about where you finish, right? So naturally during this process, there may be some information that you see is misaligned with where you are currently. Again, perfectly fine. You don't know what you don't know. So the second thing we're going to cover today is how to actually fix profile red flags if you have any, right? Third, I want you to understand, and we're going to touch base on this a couple different times as we go through this process. A lot of people think that funding is just submitting an application for X amount of, capital. Now, that is false. The majority, or really, let me correct myself, all of the work, as you'll see through this process, is done prior to ever submitting the application, because by the time you submit that application, you need to know that you are in the highest probability position to get the funding that you're looking for. And ultimately, like I said, at the end, you're going to understand the first steps that you need to take in order to get funded. Now, for those of you who may not know me, again, my name is Mr. Dorsey. Everybody just calls me Dorsey. If you do not know me, you can find me on all social media at CEO Dorsey, which is down there at the bottom. Now, I just want to give you some kind of understanding about who I am and how we actually got to this point, right? So again, I'm not going to tell you something that I think is possible. I'm going to tell you something that we do every single day and have done for almost a decade, right? So I am an expert in credit and funding. I have extensive experience in tailored solutions for both entrepreneurs and businesses, right? And as a growth consultant, I manage a 7-figure consultancy, ultimately where we streamline the process for funding, right? Asset acquisition and ultimately long-term success. And again, throughout this process, we've negotiated anywhere from startup companies getting, 10, 15, 20, $30,000. We've also worked with up to multi-million-dollar acquisitions in this process in order to acquire other businesses. So it takes a lot of experience. It takes a lot of nuanced work, and we are experienced in structuring partnerships, banks, and investors alike. Right now that all that's out the way, now the first thing we have to understand is to think like a bank. I want you to understand, because a lot of times I have these conversations, people kind of make the assumption that the banks may be against them, right? And I want you to understand that the banks are there for you to leverage. Their whole business model is lending out money, right? So that's the first thing we have to understand, but we have to understand how to actually put ourselves in position in order to go and get the capital, right? So the very first thing we're going to talk about today is changing that mindset in order to think like a bank. Listen, I love ideas. Ideas, I think, are amazing. However, when you're dealing with banks, they do not lend based on potential or ideas. They lend based on predictability and history, right? So understand, predictability is this. It's going to be your history of what you've been able to manage so far. It's going to be the accuracy of your reports and your information. And then it's going to be the organization, which is really how you package and ship off the whole thing and present it and actually show your qualifications to the bank, right? So most people don't get denied. I have a lot of conversations, I've had a lot of conversations over the years. And I want you to understand that most people do not get denied just because they don't have potential, right? A lot of businesses, a lot of people that I've worked with have had the potential to have a successful round, but most people don't actually understand the game they're playing and actually what it takes in order to get access to capital. So there's 3 questions that we are going to answer as we go through this process. So number 1, what makes a credit report fundable, right? People talk a lot about scores. People talk a lot about credit. What does it actually take to do in order on the personal credit report and the business credit in order to get funded, right? So we are going to talk about that. The other thing is, a lot of people have a business established, but is it actually structured the right way in order to get access to capital? So we're also going to answer what it actually takes for the business structure to be trustworthy. And then number 3, what do banks actually look at whenever they're looking to lend 5, 6, or multiple 6 or 7 figures, right? And this is what I'm going to walk you through, is how to create predictable outcomes, not guarantees, but to put yourself in a position so that you know you are in the highest possible position by the time the application is submitted. Now, again, the other thing I want to clarify here is we're getting access to capital. So a lot of people ask me, hey, I love that you talk about funding. I love the idea of, starting businesses, but how can we actually use it? It's very important, at least for me, whenever I talk about this, we are gaining access to capital for leverage. We are leveraging other people's money in order to go out and purchase assets and create cash flow without having to risk our own savings, right? So these are the best ways that I have personally used funding and that many of our clients have used funding in order to benefit them in their best interest, right? So there's a couple things that we're going to talk about. These are the best ways that we see in order to use or deploy the capital based on our previous clients. So number one, marketing that does bring clients. So being able to market, find new people, and in order to actually expand the business. Number two, as you grow, naturally, you are going to need more help, more assistance, and make things a lot more efficient. So being able to use capital and then invest into things like systems and staffing in order to help you grow your business. Some of my favorite, actually using capital to invest into real assets like real estate, like stocks, or actually acquiring businesses. And then you guys are all in this group right here. I'm sure you've heard it a million times over. Your network is your net worth. And so the other things that I see a lot of people use very, very successfully is investing into things like education, masterminds, and mentorships to sharpen your skills and really enhance your network. So really, this is what I want you to think about. Imagine acquiring assets, hiring a team, scaling your business, all without draining your savings or your personal credit cards, which is what I see a lot of people doing whenever they are trying to start, grow, or scale their business, right? Now that that's out the way, let's give you an introduction and let's help you understand how to actually position yourself for capital, right? So let's break this down. Let's give you a scenario. Two borrowers walk in the bank, right? There's going to be two different people. So borrower number one, in their payment history, they've got some recent lates. Their utilization, their cards are near the limit, almost maxed out. When they look at their report, their addresses are all over the place. They don't match, right? The use of funds, they really don't have a clear plan. They just kind of like the idea of, actually getting funded. When they're asked for their documents, they're, scattered, they're incomplete, they're all over the place. And because of that, the file or that application actually looks uncertain. And you would be surprised on how often situations like borrower number one actually happens. Now, the second thing we're going to look at is borrower number two, right? Borrower number two walks in the bank, and whenever they look at their reports, they've got on-time payment history. Their utilization is low. They're not maxing out, they're not maxing out their cards. Their utilization is low. Their profile alignment, right? So their names, their addresses, everything looks good. Everything looks solid. Everything looks lendable. The use of funds is growth focused, right? So they're already knowing, hey, I want to grow my company. I want to bring on some staffing. I want to invest in some marketing. I want to upgrade my systems. When they're asked for their documents, they're organized, they're ready to go. And this person looks experienced, right? And the result of that file is that that file actually looks predictable. So they're actually going to be, the bank is going to feel more comfortable lending to borrower number two. Understand, I know you are great people, but when it comes down to funding, we have to make sure that everything looks right on paper so that we can actually position ourselves for funding. Because understand, banks prioritize the banks or the profile that looks predictable and is in the highest position possible in order to pay them back, right? Now, as we notate this is just something that I do want to bring up. As we do go through this process, as you find different changes, right? As we go through information, whether regarding the personal side or the business side, do me a favor and just write those down as we go through this, because at the end, I want to hear all about, some of the value you got, some of the changes, and some of the changes you need to do whenever in order to get access to capital, right? So just something to notate as we go through this process. Now, when it comes to funding, again, I'm going to start at the very bottom and I'm going to take it all the way to the top, right? So there are a couple different things that we want to look at whenever someone is looking for business funding, because we want to know all of the available options available to them. So there's a couple different ways you can access business funding. Number one is if you have great business credit and you have established business credit already, and you have a business credit profile that is built and credible, then you can obviously use your business credit. However, most people come to me, and it's actually really insightful to a lot of people. A lot of people have a business, but the business may be in its beginning stages or its growing stages. And so naturally, they just may not have a lot of business credit either built or established, which is fine. So to understand that, when they're in that position, you can still access business funding, but if the business is not credible on its own, you can still access business funding, but the lender or the bank is going to want to look at the personal credit profile because the business is not strong enough on its own. So I wanted to clarify that, because regardless of whatever position you're in, I don't want to make any assumptions, but I want to be able to help possibly the startup or the person who has no business credit established, but they still want to access business funding, right? So in order to do that, we have to start with the personal credit, which is the foundation. So there's a lot of, honestly, credit reporting agencies out there. We are going to be discussing three. We're going to be talking about TransUnion, we're going to be talking about Equifax, and we are going to be talking about Experian. Now, when you look at these profiles, or when you look at these companies, they are data companies, right? And so it's a lot more important for you to understand not just your score. It's very important for you to understand the data, the accounts, and the information that actually make up the score. Because the most common myth that I hear is most people think that we have scores stored with TransUnion, Experian, or Equifax. That is false. We have information, data, and accounts stored with those companies. And based on the information that that company houses, their algorithm generates a score, right? But if you want to change the score, or if you want to, again, if you want to change the score, then you have to understand how to change the information that actually makes up the score, right? So there's a couple different factors we are going to break down. We're going to talk about utilization. We're going to talk about inquiries. We're going to talk about payment history. We're going to talk about credit age. We're going to talk about derogatory remarks, and we are going to be talking about total accounts, right? So this should be pretty insightful. So utilization, in very simple terms, and we're going to break this down a little bit more in just a moment, but utilization in very simple terms is the amount of credit you are using versus the amount of credit you have available, right? So let's just use very simple numbers. Let's say you have $1,000 credit card. If on that $1,000 credit card you are using $100, $100 out of a $1,000 credit card is 10%. If you're using $300 out of that $1,000 credit card, that's 30%. If you're using $800 out of that $1,000 card, that is 80%, right? So very simple. Utilization is, like I said, the amount of credit you are using versus the amount of credit that you have available. Now, a lot of people come to me and they say, hey, Dorsey, I've got a $10,000 credit card. I can use the whole amount, and I've been using it for this, this, and this, and that, and the third, right? Which I understand that you may have X amount of limit for the card, but you have to understand that banks, it's very important to understand that banks are in the business of lending money, but they like to lend money to people who don't, or profiles or businesses that don't look like they need the money, right? So when you're using this, yes, you have the available credit limit, but when you're looking for funding at the time of funding, there are certain data points that you need to align to. You want to be less than 30% utilization on those accounts, ideally less than 20%, but less than 30% minimal. And that's overall utilization, and that's per account, right? The next thing we're going to talk about is inquiries. So inquiries they don't damage a lot from the credit score. However, inquiries is a top reason why, even though it doesn't damage your credit score a whole lot, I see a lot of people, or a lot of applicants, get denied because they have too many inquiries. Understand, this process focuses less on the score and more on the profile, because inquiries leave a record of how often you are looking or applying for credit. So if there are too many inquiries in a short amount of time, the bank starts to make the assumption that you are credit desperate, right? So it's very, very important. Even though an inquiry might only knock you a couple of points, too many inquiries can be the difference from getting access to capital and getting denied, right? So within the last 6 months, an ideal position within the last 6 to 12 months, an ideal position that you really want to be in is with 0 to 3 inquiries. Never over 3 inquiries on that particular bureau, right? So that's important. Now, payment history. We're going to break this down a little bit more in just a moment as well, too. When I'm talking to you and when I'm teaching you, I want to help you get high limits of capital. So in order to get high limits of capital, we have to show that we are credible to receive the funding we are looking for. So when it comes to payment history, you want a record and a history of on-time payment history whenever we are looking for more money from the bank, right? And again, I'm going to break down all of these in really, really simple terms or really, really simple understanding in just a few minutes. Now, credit age. Lenders like to see a history, right? They want to see somebody who's had a couple years, a couple experiences, they've gone through a couple seasons of life, and they've been shown that they can actually manage the credit they have, right? And so when you're looking at credit, you really want an average age of 4+ years whenever you are looking to use or enhance the credibility or lendability of your credit profile. Now, kind of going back to payment history, when you're looking for high limits of capital, at the time of application, you don't want a history of anything derogatory on your report, such as collections, charge-offs, bankruptcies, things of that nature being reported on your credit report. And when you talks about the accounts, and we're going to break down thin versus thick profiles a little bit later, but when you're looking at accounts, or when lenders are looking at accounts, again, they want to lend to somebody who has history. They want to lend to somebody who has experience. So this is why we focus less on the score and more on the profile, because when it comes to total accounts, you really want 10+ total accounts on your report. And that can be a combination of some credit cards, some auto loans, mortgages, installment accounts, different things of that nature to show your experience. Now, again, just at the bottom that I'll talk about here, these are the ideal metrics for the maximum approvals. These are not the absolute determinants for smaller approvals, but again, understand that this process focuses more on the profile and less on the score. And later on, we will talk about some minimals, right? But again, when I come on and anytime I talk, I want to show you how to do it big. I want to show you how to get big and access amounts to capital. Now, let's talk about payment history, right? Because I want to take this all the way home. So when we talk about payment history, everyone that I typically talk to either probably has some experience, right? You may have some experience with like a relative or a friend who borrows. They borrow the money, right? They're very adamant about borrowing the money. They promise you they're going to pay you back, right? But sometimes they might just forget to pay you back, right? It might be a couple days late, it might be a couple weeks, it might be a month, or they might just forget all in total, right? And after a while, when this person asks you for money, you love them, right? You believe in them, they have potential, but they're just not performing the way that you need them to perform, right? And so after a while, you start to really stop lending them money because you understand, or you have the expectation that that person is not going to pay you back, right? Banks think the same exact way. Your payment history is your reputation on paper, right? So when it comes to credit report, most of us or all of us probably went to some kind of school, right? I'm assuming if you are here, right, you're obviously went to some kind of school, right? And so most of us probably got a report card whenever we were in school. Your credit report is your adult report card. That's it. It is your reputation on paper. The bank doesn't know all the great things you've done or all the things you've been through. All they can look at is, based on the paper, how qualified or how lendable is this applicant, right? And so understand, a clean and streak and a qualified or reliable profile shows reliability. If there's late or missed payments, that signals to the bank that there's some kind of uncertainty. They don't know if it's a mistake, right? They don't know if all the things you went through, all they can see is, hey, this person wants 50,000, 100,000, 200,000, but they've got some recent late payments, right? And so you can understand that it gets a little challenging. Now, it's okay. Remember, where you start is not where you're going to end up. So if you've had issues or if you currently have issues, that's fine. We're going to talk about some different things in order to correct it. But it's important that from this point forward, when you get really serious about accessing capital, that you build new patterns that make the lender feel more comfortable, right? Because underwriters and banks, they lend on history, not potential. Now, let's do a little bit of deep dive on utilization and limits, right? So utilization, kind of like we talked about it earlier, is how much of your revolving limits you are using when your statement dates report, Now, what are revolving accounts? Revolving accounts, very simply, are like credit cards. They are accounts where you make a payment. There is no preset amount. There is no preset payment. There is no preset term. You use the amount. As you use it, the credit goes down. And as you pay it back, the credit becomes available again. Most common forms of this are personal credit cards, home equity lines of credit, and personal lines of credit, right? Now, the lower the usage looks a lot safer to the lender, when most strong profiles are going to show balances in the low range. Just kind of how I talked about earlier. Banks love to lend money, but they feel safer lending money to applicants that don't look like they need the money. This is why it's understanding why we have to put this work in before we submit that application. Just kind of how I talked about earlier, example, on a $1,000 limit, a $250 balance shows a 25% balance. Now, this is something that I want you to understand as well too. Balances are typically reported once a month, and it's what's listed on the statement date or the closing date. So understand, I've had this conversation with clients all the time throughout the year. Hey, Dorsey, I paid down my credit card. I paid down my balances. I'm ready to submit. Again, lenders lend on information that they can verify. So the statement date, even if, for example, today's the 20th and you made your payment today, that does not mean that your balance is going to be reflected tomorrow or next week or whenever the case may be, because the statement date comes around once a month, right? So recently, this last week, I had a client, it was like the 17th. They were like, hey, we paid down the balance. I'm ready to submit the application. However, their statement date was the 15th. They paid down their balance 2 days after the statement date. So in that scenario, that client has to wait until the 15th of next month, after the 15th of next month, when that statement date is actually reported. It's important that I say this because I've seen a lot of people over the years blow their funding sequence or not get the funding that they were looking for just because they were under the impression or under the assumption that the day they pay down their balance is the day that it is reported. So it's very, very important that you understand and take note of those statement dates and those closing dates. Now, moving on, let's talk about dirty versus clean, and let's talk about data integrity, right? We're talking about business funding. So let's just put yourself in a position where you've got a business and two people come in and they're applying to work for your business, right? So imagine two job candidates. One of them shows up in a wrinkled shirt. Every time you interview them, they give a different address. Things aren't spelled correctly. And you've got another applicant. They show up, they're pressed, they're clean, they're on time. They give everything accurately every single time. Which one of those people would you most likely give the opportunity to work in your business? If you'll do me a favor, if it was put a 1 in the chat, if it's the person who shows up in the wrinkled shirt and looks uncertain, and do me a favor and put a 2 in the chat if it's going to be the person who shows up clean, organized, and ready to go. So 1 in the chat if it's, there we go. 1 in the chat if it's the unorganized person, 2 in the chat if it's the clean and organized. There we go. Some 2s in the chat. There we go. Right? Because that person looks lendable and qualified. And it seems like you could trust them with your business. Your business is your baby, right? Your business is your business. The banks think at it the same way. Credit files work the same exact way. Names and addresses that match across the report look organized. Mismatches make it the assumption that this person may not be a stable applicant. Why do they have this address? Why do they have that address? Are they at 2 or 3 different addresses? How long are they at the addresses, right? And so when you have these mismatches, it can trigger automated flags before a person ever reviews your profile. The other thing that I want to highlight here is most people, again, think that we have scores with these companies, TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. So let's say your name was Bob Jones. You are not the only Bob Jones in the world. There are thousands, possibly tens of thousands, possibly millions of other people with the combination of Bob or Jones in their name. So understand that banks align this information or your profile based on information like your names, spelling of your names, recent addresses, and current addresses. And again, when there are mismatches there, it can make it seem challenging or unqualified or uncertain whenever someone is looking for access to capital. So the identity alignment, right? How do we fix this and how do we make ourselves clean? So the first thing is you're going to make sure that you have the information matching everywhere. Your full legal name, your current address, and all of your contact information. Now, people ask me all the time, hey, how do I do this? I would love to update my, info. How do I do it? Very, very simply, you're going to do this. For one, the credit reporting agencies are where the information is reporting to. So you don't want to start there. You really want to start with the accounts that you have. So if you have credit cards, if you have mortgages, if you have auto loans, you want to call and contact those creditors and make sure that they have the correct spelling of your name. Make sure that they only have your current address, making sure that they have the correct phone number on file, making sure that they have the correct email on file, right? Making sure everything aligns there first, because those are the companies who are going to report it to the credit reporting agencies, TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. So after you verify the information is up to date and only your up-to-date information with your creditors, then at that point, you're going to reach out to the credit reporting agencies and you are going to ensure that, hey, I verified with my creditor, this is the information. You need to make sure that you have the information matching exactly, because even those small mismatches, an extra letter, a middle name, a mispronunciation, a misspelling, even those small differences can either slow decisions or even possibly result in a denial, right? And so clear alignment prevents avoidable friction and delays, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about this in just a moment. Now, let's talk about thin versus thick profiles. When you're looking at this, you want to look at the age, you want to look at the mix, and you want to look at the number of new accounts on your profile. So when it comes to age, older files feel more predictable, right? It's just history, it's just experience. Most people are going to look at hiring someone with experience or lending or working with someone with experience rather than, trying to figure this out or really having minimal to no experience at all. So many lenders are more comfortable. We talked about 4 years earlier. The average age that you really want to look at is 3 to 5 years. You want your oldest account, ideally 5 years, and the newest account on your profile, you really want them to have 3 to 6 months of history. Now, some of these can be altered a little bit, but you want to stick as close to this data as possible, especially when it comes to age and those new accounts, because too many new accounts, again, shows uncertainty. And so they want to see what that payment history is like as they progress over these next couple months. Now, when we talk about mix, I kind of touched on it a little bit just a couple minutes ago. You don't need everything, but variety does help, right? You really want a couple credit cards, right? You want 3 to 5, ideally 3 to 5 well-managed cards and a healthy base, and some installment accounts. Installment accounts, just very simply, the most common are things like mortgages or your auto loan. Those are a predetermined loan amount over a predetermined term, whether it's 12 months, 24 months, 48, 60, 72, right? Whatever the case may be. And every single month how much that payment is. That is an installment account. So installment accounts are good as well too. They are optional. You really want, again, one active or one closed to show that you can manage the predetermined amounts. And new accounts, it's great if you're building out your profile, but understand it looks a little uncertain in the short term because the lender's like, hey, they just got a new account. Now I want to see how they manage that new account before I'm going to look to add them new accounts, because again, they want to make sure you manage it and make sure that you don't get over leveraged. So new accounts within the last 30 days, new accounts within the last 90 days, 0 is ideal. New accounts within the last 6 months, 0 to 2 is okay. And when it comes to hard inquiries, you really want 0 to 2 within the last 6 months, or 0 to 3 within the last 12 months, like we talked about earlier, right? Now, let's get back to paperwork chaos versus a neat folder. So again, you've got a business, you've got people coming through, you've got applicants, you're thriving, you've got applicants coming through, everyone wants to work with you, right? You've got really popular. So now you've got applicants coming through and they're like, hey, I would love to work for you. So let's picture 2 of them. One of them shows up, they've got a backpack, they've got full of crumpled papers, it's all over the place. They might open the backpack, papers are falling all on the floor, right? It looks extremely unorganized. The other hands over a labeled folder with exactly what you were looking for, organized, and they can reference or find any piece of information that you ask them upon request, instead of dropping paperwork, dropping things all over the place, right? Now, when you're looking at this, most people are going to choose the person or the applicant, again, that looks organized and looks ready, because banks are going to reward, again, it's experience. Banks are going to reward the person who is prepared and professional. When your documents are accurate, when they're current and easy to find, it makes a yes seem really comfortable and easy for the bank, right? Very important here, because a lender or a bank, and we're going to talk about really how to talk to bankers in a couple minutes, but bankers can tell based on your conversation or based on your organization how experienced you are in this process. We want to show them that we have been here before. This is not our first time looking for funding. Even if it is, we want to present ourselves that they believe that we show experience. This is not our first time looking for funding. This is not our first time running a business. We run a profitable business. We run a growing business, and we are used to being in this position and having this conversation, right? So now that we've gone through some of the things that you have to get ready, if there's some things that you learned, or there's some things that you need to prepare, now that you know, even if they're not ready today, now that from here, at this point forward, if you're going to stay ready so you don't have to get ready, do me a favor and drop ready in the chat. I need to know that you guys are going to be ready to go, and you guys are going to be operating as professionals from this point forward. There we go. Thank you, Raheem. I appreciate that. Ready. I love that. I love that. There we go. There we go. Ready. There we go. Awesome. I love that. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. I love that. I love that. Now that we've laid the foundation for the personal, now we're going to actually transition over to the business, and to show the bank, hey, even if this is my first business, I'm in here and I got some information that I'm going to show you. I know how to operate like a professional business, because when you present your business and when you build your business, they need to know that you are a real operator. You are a real business owner, because when banks see real businesses, you get access to real capital, right? So again, we're going to start at the very bottom, and we're going to wake up and we're going to work our way up. You may already have a business. It might already be thriving, right? But there might be somebody on here, or somebody who catches the recording, who's trying to figure out, hey, I've got a business idea. I need to start it up, and I need to figure out how to do it. So that's what we're going to start in an 8-step process. I'm going to show you how to actually build the structure for your business with these banks, right? Number one, if you don't have a business, you have to come up with some kind of business name, right? You have to have some kind of entity name. The next thing is that you have to have a domain. My bad. Let me back up a little bit, because I know this is a trust class. My bad. Let me back up. So this is a trust class. It is, let me clarify here whenever I start to transition to this point. It is absolutely possible to get a trust funded. However, it's a little different department, because the trust is an actual contract agreement. So it works a little bit different than traditional financing. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, to my understanding, based on the trust that I've built with this community, is they are private trust. So for me personally, I can only give you advice for the way that I operate personally, right? For me personally, if I have a private trust, I do not want my trust on public record, right? I don't want the risk or the exposure to a private trust to be accessible, right? So what I'm going to do personally, and I can only teach you for what I do personally, is teaching you how to leverage public state entities such as LLCs or corporations to keep the trust private and operate in the best interest of the trust, right? So this is me personally. Now, because of that, I'm going to be showing you how to establish LLCs and corporations so that you can leverage them and in the best interest of the trust. So the number one thing, now that that's out the way, or that clarification is clear, now we can start. So for you to have a business, you have to create that business, right? You have to create an LLC. You have to create some kind of corporation, right? You have to have some kind of business name. Now, for professionalism, you need to get a domain. A domain is just a fancy word for a website. You can use websites like GoDaddy, Google Domains. Those are the two most popular we use, right? Now, it's going to be important that when you do this, that you choose a business name that has the domain available, right? So for example, if your company is ABC Consulting, you don't want the domain BEF Consulting, right? It's going to look confusing. It's going to look a little unprofessional, right? So you want to use a domain that has the business available, right? So if you have ABC Consulting and that's your company name, you want to go find the abcconsulting.com or the abcconsulting.net or the abcconsulting.io, something that makes it easy for your business to be found, right? Makes it very, very professional. The next thing is, when you have that domain, you're going to get your business email address, and it's going to be at your domain. So for example, if your name is Bob and you own abcconsulting.com, your email is going to be bob@abcconsulting.com. Looks a lot more professional when going in the bank and looking for access to capital than it's saying hotgirl9325z@yahoo.com, right? And a lot of people laugh, but I cannot tell you how common that is, right? And again, there's these minor little data points that make a really big difference by the time you are submitting application. The other thing, your business is separate from your personal, right? I love loyalty. I'm a huge fan of loyalty. But when it comes to finances between me and the business, we've got to divorce. We've got to separate ourselves. We've got to stay over. I'm going to stay over here and you're going to stay over there, right? Because your business is its own entity, which means ideally it has its own address. It has its own phone number. It has its own email address. Because let's think about it. If you're a growing business and you're looking for high amounts of capital, most likely growing businesses have what? Corporate phone numbers, staffs, support. So you really want to be able to show that, hey, I'm not running this business from my personal phone. If it's where you are currently, that's fine. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do, right? But understand that you want to eventually put your business in a position so that it operates like a true enterprise. Now, number 3, when you have all of that information, let me back up. On the address, I get a lot of questions. Hey, I would love to get an address, but I don't know where to go. And I don't want to spend all this money a month on a brick and mortar. All you have to do is, for your city and state. I've talked a lot about virtual offices over the years. If you've seen my recordings, I've talked a lot about virtual offices. However, the industry has pivoted. It has changed. Some of those virtual offices that I've talked about Alliance and Regis and certain things like that, they might not work as efficient as they used to, right? Because this industry pivots. So what you're going to do is you're going to type in, you're going to go to Google, your best friend, one of your best friends, you're going to go to Google, you're going to type in the city and state of your business. And after that, you're going to type executive office. So I'm in Orlando, Florida. So if I'm looking for offices, I'm going to type in Orlando, Florida, executive offices. It's going to give you local offices that are legitimate qualified offices that are not in massive databases that everyone is using, and you can use it local to your city. You pay a small fee, sometimes monthly, sometimes yearly, and you can have mail sent there. You can have, people accept mail and information on your behalf. So that's how you would get your business address. In full transparency, since COVID, it has been a little more acceptable to have a home-based business, but again, it has to make sense. So the more professional your business looks, just understand the more capital that you will get. Now, when you have all of that information for your business, then you're going to go to your Secretary of State. Every state has a Secretary of State, and this is where you are going to put your company on record. Now you have birthed or established that business. You can do these things yourself, or there are third parties out there. We personally use a website called Zen Business. That's ZEN business.com. The reason we use them, they're just, again, there's a lot of sites out there. The reason that we use that site, particularly because they have great customer service, but because they will establish your business without charging you additional fees on top of state fees. Now, what they try to do is get like little upsells regarding operating agreements and bylaws or certain things. But if you have all of that information, you can have Zen Business set up your business, and you are not obligated to purchase any of their upsells, and they will only charge you whatever the price that your state charges you in order to open your business. The state fee for every state is completely different, right? Now, number 4, when you do that, you want to have a registered agent. A registered agent is just a qualified entity or person on your behalf that can accept mail, right? So you want to make sure that you have a registered agent, and ideally that is not you. You can find all kind of registered agent services. You can Google it. There's really not one that is better than the other. It's all just based on preference, right? The other thing is your business. And since we're talking about trust here, you want to have an operating agreement. So people come to me and they say, hey, I've got this trust and it owns this company, or it controls this company. How can I get funded? How can I use what I have to get funded on behalf of the trust? If you do that, that's fine, but it's going to come down to an operating agreement with an LLC or a bylaw within a corporation. And this is just going to be a document that outlines who has power to do what and the authority to do what on behalf of the business or the entity, right? So very, very important that you have those operating agreements or those bylaws. Number 5, once you have your entity set up, you're going to get an EIN. You guys have talked all about the EIN for the trust. You get the EIN for the business as well too. Just as Christina showed you, you go online, you go to irs.gov, and you can get them for free. They're like 5 or 10 minutes. If you need help, worst case, go to YouTube. But I say this, and I always bold this in free, because I can't tell you how many times over the years I've talked to someone, they've paid someone $300, $500, $1,000 in order to go get an EIN, and it literally just takes a couple minutes. The other thing that we talk about, you will want to set up a DNB, which is what's called a Dun & Bradstreet. This is just another business credit reporting agency, but I talk to a lot of people who do want to get into government contracts. You need that DNB number just to make it a lot easier throughout that process. Now, once you have your business, you need to have some kind of online presence, because when you're going to the banks, they're going to say, hey, Bob, you've got a great business, but how can I find you? You say you're doing this, you say you're growing here, you say you're ready to do this, but I can't find you on the internet, right? So you got to get some kind of website, even if it's a basic website. A lot of people ask me, hey, does it have to be a huge fancy website? No, it can be a simple one-page form, has a picture of you or a business logo, and just has some kind of way where someone can at least reach out to contact you, whether it's an email, whether it's a submission form, whatever the case may be. There's all kind of AI sites out here that can draft you a site within a few minutes. Worst case, you can go on things like Upwork or Fiverr, and someone can build you a one-page website for pretty cheap. The other alternatives here, and this is what I've seen lately, especially in some of these higher acquisitions, is that they want to see a website, but they want to see some other kind of online presence as well too, whether it be a YouTube, a Facebook, an Instagram, a blog, a newsletter, something of that nature that shows your business. Now, number 7, very important. A lot of people, it is not uncommon that I've consulted people who have a business, but they don't have a business, but they don't have a business bank account. I mean, I've talked to some people, they've been operating 3, 4, 5 years, good cash flowing business, but they still got the money running through their personal accounts. Again, we have to separate and divorce ourselves financially from the business. You have a personal account, you have a business bank account. When you are going to open up these business bank accounts, it is a business checking account at least. When you go to a bank, whatever bank that you decide is best, you're going to go to a bank and you are going to open up a business checking account. Your business is not legitimate until the day that you open up the business bank account, right? You have to be able to have some kind of record that you have a relationship established and somewhere for your business revenue to go, right? Now, we're going to talk about building relationships. So when we talk about building bank accounts, when we talk about building relationships with banks, all that is using the bank's products. So a checking account, a savings account, a credit card, auto loans, mortgages, different things of that nature, right? These are different ways that you can establish relationships or strengthen your relationship with the bank because it's showing interest in the bank. And the bank wants to go long-term. They want to build with you long-term. So they want to see that you have interest in them to build with them long-term. So when you open these business bank accounts, at bare minimum, open up a business checking. You can open up a business savings. And at that bank, if you want to strengthen your relationship, you can open personal bank accounts, whether checking or savings. But again, they must be separate from the business. Now, when you open up the bank account, make a deposit. Do not go open up a bank account and not make any kind of deposit, right? Put some money in there as much as possible is what I would tell you. There's not necessarily a set amount. Every situation is different depending on the amount of capital that someone is looking for. I would say if you have the resources and you can put, $5,000 in that account, that would be great. Some of our clients, they can only put $50, $100. At the bare minimum, I can't tell you what is the absolute, amount that you need to put in there for the amount of funding that you're looking for. But I'm going to tell you at the bare minimum, put at least $50 to $100 in there. Some banks do have certain minimals that you do have to meet. But if they don't, I'm going to tell you at minimal, at least put $50 to $100 in there, right? And then again, number 8, whenever we talk about building relationships with banks, having things like bank accounts, merchant accounts, credit products, things of that nature, that's how you actually build the relationship with the bank. Now, going over to business structure, most businesses get denied not because they didn't have the potential to get funded, but because they looked unprepared, right? Fundable businesses are not just established. Just like I said, you don't just go and establish a business and give any kind of information out there and think that you have a business. They have to be structured in order to be trusted to get the capital that they're looking for. And the system and the information that we've walked through today is showing you how to set up your business the right way so that you get the professional presence, so that you get the proper registrations, and so that your business is set up like a smart financial setup. Because just like how I talked about a couple moments ago, when banks see and can verify a real business, they will send you real money that you can use, right? So just a couple red flags over here for why we see most businesses end up getting denied, right? Number 1, the personal information does not match across the credit reporting agencies. That's why we start from the bottom and work our way up. There's no real online presence or, business structure. I've seen clients go to the bank. Their business is running. They might make $500,000 a year, but they might just be transacting through emails. They don't have any website. And I've seen businesses like that get denied because the bank can't verify, hey, you're saying you make $500,000 a year, X amount a year, but I can't find any information about your business. How do you manage your clients? How do they find you? So it's important, again, even if you don't necessarily use the websites to conduct business, have it set up so that it looks professional, right? No credit history under the business, no credibility with the business credit reporting agencies, and they are not positioned to pass underwriting based on the personal data points and the business data points that we talked about up to here. Now, establishing a business, because a lot of the clients ask me, hey, I'm not sure what it actually takes or what I need to do in order to acquire business. So there's 3 major ways that we've assisted and had experience in helping clients establish a business or get access to capital. Give me like 10 seconds. Let me get a sip of water, and then we're going to jump right back into it. All right. So we're going to talk about three. We're going to talk about startups. So this is if you don't have a business already, right? If you have a business already, that's great. Yours might fit into one of these categories. But if you don't have a business, these are the three ways that we have seen clients establish a business to put themselves in position to get funded, right? So number one, we're going to talk about startups. Number two, we're going to talk about age corporations. And number three, we're going to talk about one of my favorite, which is acquisitions. So number one, there are pros and cons to each and every one. So it's important that I discuss all of these, right? So startup is good because you get the maximum flexibility and creativity whenever you create this business because you're building it from the ground up, right? So you can make new offerings, you can establish new markets, and you can innovate freely because it's a startup company. Now, one myth, I'm going to answer one myth and then I'm going to clarify that myth. People approach us all the time and they're like, hey, I've got a startup company. There's no way that I can get access to funding. There is, if you fit the data points that we've talked about through here. So understand, startups can still get funded. They can still get capital. They want to be at least 30 to 60 days old so that they can, have some kind of relationships, get established a little bit. But obviously, just as we talked about through here, history and experience, when you have more history and you have more experience, you're going to get access to more capital. So yes, it is possible to get a startup funded, but understand that we have to realign some of those numbers just because it is a new entity, right? So the older the entity is, the more capital you're going to get, right? So there's the next thing. We talk about age corps. Age corporations are businesses that were previously established and older that people or businesses can acquire or grab and get access to, where ultimately they are purchasing time, right? So in very simple, you can have a startup company, or there are businesses out there from day one, you can purchase their age, right? So age corporations, whenever we deal with age corporations, we are typically looking for someone to get a 2 to 5 year old entity when it comes to age corporations, because it's an established business that was legally formed previously, right? Or older. So they get broader access to capital or financing due to the corporation's age and longer history. When someone is looking to fund, would they rather fund a startup, or the bank would typically look at a startup versus an older business? Just as we talked about through this process, they want to hire again for history and experience. Now, when it comes to age corps, I love age corps, but I do have the disclaimer that you do have to get them from a trusted and qualified source. Not all sources or managers of age corporations are as clean as the others. So if you have a qualified aged corporation person, great, work with them. If you don't, and if you do need them, we are a trusted resource and have been for a long time to source funding ready age corporations that are prepared, right? Now, number three, acquisitions, one of my personal favorite, right? Because you can fast track. A lot of people talk about starting up a company or acquiring age corporations. People don't really realize that you can acquire other companies that are already performing, and you can fast track your growth by acquiring a business that already has established operations and market presence. And the reason these are beneficial is because you get immediate access to revenue, you get trained staff, you get valuable customer relationships that you can monetize, right? So when you have a business that has growth already, again, and it has age and it has revenue and it has all these things, again, there's age, there's history, there's experience. So typically it is going to be a lot more qualified applicant. And then, just as I talked about in the beginning, we have experience with all of these. We've funded startups. We've also assisted in multi-million-dollar acquisitions for both clients and partners alike. Now, when you go to the bank, you have to understand the documents to expect. This is very important because it's some very simple things if you grab them before you go to the bank. But if you go to the bank without these documents, they're going to be looking at you a little sideways, right? And they're going to be like, I don't know how experienced this person is, right? So let's talk about some things that you need to take to the bank with you when you are going to the bank, right? So have them ready. organized, and in a folder or easily accessible. Personal ID, you have to be able to verify yourself. You need some kind of proof of address, whether it's utilities, whether it's the lease, whatever the case may be. And you need to have your entity documents. You need to have your EIN letter. The AOI is the Articles of Incorporation or the Articles of Organization. That is what you will get from the Secretary of State. And you need to have your operating agreement or your bylaws, right? Because being prepared is an advantage, just like how we talked about earlier. When you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And when you're at the bank and you're having these conversations, they say, hey, do you have this and do you have that? And you just easily pull it out. I'm like, oh, this person knows what they're talking about, right? They're speaking the same language. They're having the same action. So obviously I see they got some experience. They might not know that you didn't know this until you came on this call, right? But now you know. So when you know, you're going to be treated a lot differently, right? Now, when it comes to reports, you have to understand who pulls what. Because when you're looking for lending at banks, they are going to check credit profiles, whether personal credit profiles or business credit profiles. Now, most people have the assumption that when they go and apply, remember, we talked about TransUnion, we talked about Experian, and we talked about Equifax. There is a very common misunderstanding that when you go and apply, that the banks or the lender is going to pull all three. And actually, it is very rare that the banks will review all three credit reports in consideration for the application. Most banks will pull one or a combination of the two. Most banks will not pull all three. This is very, very, very important. Now, because what you're going to do when you start to position yourself in like, hey, okay, I'm gonna start to structure what we call a funding sequence or a funding plan. How are we going to execute this? So the number one is you're going to check all three of your reports and you're going to identify the reports that currently look the strongest. If you've seen your credit report before, I'm sure that you've seen different scores on those credit reports. And you're like, hey, I don't understand why this is like this. It's because, for one, not all information. The other thing here is that a lot of people assume that every account you get reports to all three credit reporting agencies. That's not true either. So you have to currently view the credit reports. You have to know ahead of time what you're working with before you go and do it, right? So you're going to work with the ones that look the strongest. You're going to look for the things that we've talked about through here. You're going to look for clean payment history. You're going to look for lower utilization. You're going to look for the ones that have your matching name and address and the fewer inquiries. And then you're going to choose the lenders that align with that credit reporting agency first. Now, very important, you don't need to memorize every lender rule. There are thousands of banks out here. There's over 4,000 banks in the United States alone. A lot of people may just see the local banks in their community and might think there's just a handful of banks. There are over 4,000 banks, not including credit unions, in the United States alone, right? So you don't need to memorize every lender rule. Every lender, every application is going to be different. You don't have to memorize every lender rule. All you have to do is build a simple habit, right? You're going to review your strongest reports first. You're going to establish a lender relationship, just like how we talked about throughout this process. You're going to make a deposit. This creates the momentum and keeps the process predictable. So very simple. You're going to have your strongest report. You're going to establish a relationship, and then you're going to make a deposit. Now, and we're going to talk a little bit later. A lot of people ask me, hey, how do I know what bank pulls what agency? How do I figure this out, right? We're going to break that down in just a little bit, but we have to talk about monitoring and timing, because before you can take action, you have to see the information that's being reported on your behalf. So you're going to check for all three credit reports, and you're going to wait for the updates to actually report. So let's say you saw the report and you got to remove some inquiries, or you got to lower the utilization, or you've got to do something, right? Remember, you've got to wait until the actual report is reported on the report so that other lenders or other institutions can actually review the information. You're going to pay down, and just like how I was talking about, a pay down or a dispute that hasn't reported won't help your application. I know I've had clients plead with me a million times. Dorsey, I paid it down. I'm ready to get funded. I know I paid it down. I need to go right now, right? But the lender, even though you know you paid it down, it hasn't reported. So the lender can't see that that information is reported. And remember, they want to trust you. They might think you're a great person, but remember, they're looking at the paperwork, and the paperwork has to align with what they are looking for. When it does, you're going to be in a higher probability to pass through. When it doesn't, well, it's going to lower your chances, right? Timing matters. This is very, very important. Timing matters. So you can only, or my advice and best practice would be to only submit after the file looks ready. I don't care. For me personally, I hear you, but you need to make sure that it's reported, because as a consulting company, we can only advise clients on the best practice, but when a client makes a decision, we have to go with what the client thinks best is for them, right? And I'm telling you, I've seen time and time and time again, somebody's in a rush, they're looking for 50,000, X amount of funding. They think that just because they paid it down, they're ready to go. Doesn't matter how many times I've told them to wait, right? They're like, hey, I got to go right now. And I have seen multiple times, because of that, people blow their funding sequence or their funding opportunities just because they couldn't wait an extra couple days, right? And then they're, oh, I didn't get the funding I was looking for. Well, it's because you were in a rush. And I'm going to tell you, 9 times, really 10 times out of 10, almost every single time that I have consulted or seen someone in a rush on their funding sequence, they hardly ever, if ever, get the results that they're looking for, or even in the ballpark of the results that they're looking for, right? So very important. Patience for one reporting cycle can be the difference between approved and denied, right? So very, very important that I cover that. Now, kind of to recap a little bit what we have done here. So you're going to have the right credit. So this is how we choose sequences. This is how we create funding plans. You're going to choose the right credit reporting agency with the right banks in the right order. So this is a very methodical process. As you can see, it's a little bit of a process to get to this point. So you're going to sequence strategically, not randomly. You don't just pull up a bunch of random applications just because there's someone, you saw an ad, or it's a bank you saw and you just start randomly pulling up and submitting applications. That's not what you do. You have to understand who they pull from. You have to understand their application rules. You're going to lead with banks that favor your strongest credit, your credit reporting agencies. The other thing is pre-qualifications. A lot of people are not aware of pre-qualifications. Some banks have them, some banks do not. If they have them, use them, because a pre-qualification is kind of like a peek behind the curtain. They're going to soft pull. So there's soft inquiries and there's hard pull inquiries. A pre-qualification does a soft pull. That means they're going to review your information, but there's not going to be an actual record of that inquiry on your profile. If you submit the application at that point, then it would. But on a pre-qualification, it's kind of like a peek behind the curtain. They're going to pre-give you an assumption based on the information that you submitted. Are you in a position to get a product that they offer? The hack here, the trick here is, if you don't get the pre-qualification, don't submit the application, because they already told you, hey, we're most likely not going to approve this application, because on the soft pulls, that's where they give you the pre-qual. But if you actually submit the application, whether or not they give you the pre-approval or not for that soft pull, that's when the hard inquiry actually happens. So use the pre-qualification tools, and guess what? If you don't get the decision that you're looking for, don't use it. But the other thing, and I want to clarify here, is no means next opportunity. So understand this in funding. A no is the cheat code. And I know that sounds a little crazy, but let me bring it home. When lenders tell you no, or if they decline an application, they have to tell you why. Legally, they have to tell you why. So guess what? We're going to use that to our advantage. If I go to a lender and they deny me, they're going to send me a letter that outlines the exact reasons why they denied me. So guess what? It's like the cheat sheet. It's like the cheat sheet. It's like the cheat sheet to the code, to the test. All I have to do is correct the information that they told me was wrong and the reason why they denied me. All I have to do is correct that information, and then I can reapply at a later time. So no means next opportunity. That's fine. What you're going to do is, after each sequence, you're going to pause. You're going to confirm the decisions. based on the results that you're getting. And if the results shift, whether approvals, whether denials, whatever the case may be, you're going to adjust your order rather than forcing the plan. Very, very important. You can have an initial plan, but you have to make data-driven decisions based on the feedback that you're getting as you're going through this process. Now, understand, when we are talking about funding, it is a sequence of banks. If you're looking for 50,000, 100,000, even sometimes 20,000, it's absolutely possible. But depending on the situation or the qualifications that you have, you may or may not be in position to get that from one bank. I like to set the expectation that you're most likely not going to get 50,000, 100,000, whatever the case, from one bank. Possible in some scenarios, but generally speaking, it's not possible for most people, depending on what they qualify for. So because of that, I want you to understand, for example, if I'm looking for 100,000, it's a lot easier to go to banks and get 20 to 30,000 than it is to go to one bank and get 100,000, right? So understand, a round is a set of smart attempts, not a single shot. Some approvals will be large, some of them will be small, and some of them will be declines or may be declines, right? Typically, you're going to, the important part here is for you to log each application, keep your profile clean based on the information that we talked about throughout this process, and you're going to adjust based on your results, based on the feedback that you get. Again, don't try to force the plan. When they give you an answer and they give you the decisions, accept those decisions and operate based on that feedback. Your total outcome comes from the sequence, not any one single decision. So I hope that this makes sense. Now, this is where we're going to get into how do you actually build relationships and how do you get the information for what you're actually looking for. Very simple, right? So BRMs are what are called banking relationship managers. In very, very short terms, it is a trusted representative at the bank or the institution that you are looking to apply for, right? So there's a couple things we're going to do here. When you go there, there's a couple things you want to ask, there's a couple things that you want to bring, and there's going to be some best practices. And I assure you, if you do this, you're going to be speaking their language and you're going to be treated a lot differently, right? Because you sound like, and you are presenting yourself like a presentable business owner, right? So number one, what to ask. A lot of people ask me, hey, how do you find out or how do you know which credit reporting agency the bank pulls from? Ask them. Build a relationship and ask them, hey, I'm looking to apply for your business credit card. I'm looking to apply for your business line of credit. I'm looking to apply for your business auto loan. Just out of curiosity, because I want to be mindful of your time, which credit reporting agency do you guys typically pull from? They're going to let you know, right? They're in the business of helping you get closed deals, to close deals for the bank, and they don't want to waste their time. So they are willing to give you this information, right? You just got to ask. Number two is ask them, do I have the ability to apply for multiple products? So most people assume when you go to a bank that you can only apply for one product. I can only apply for one auto loan. I can only apply for one credit card. I can only apply for one loan. That's not always true with the banks. Sometimes you can do multiple products with one inquiry. So you might do one inquiry, but you might get two credit cards, or you might get a credit card and an auto loan, or you might get a mortgage and an auto loan at the same time. There are some banks you can get 4 products, one inquiry, right? So it's important that you ask them, hey, if I submit this, do I have the ability to apply for another product? Hey, I'm looking at this credit card, but I kind of want a loan, or I'm looking at these 2 credit cards. I'm not really sure which one I want. Can I apply for 2 of them? Is it the same inquiry, right? So you want to know about your ability to apply for multiple products. The other thing, hey, listen, I want to be mindful of your time. What documents do I need to have prepared so that I can apply for the business credit card, for the business line of credit, for the business loan, whatever the case may be, and the timeline to apply? Can I apply immediately? Do I have to wait some time? What is the timeline to apply? Because some banks are different. Some banks you can apply immediately. Some banks you don't have to have an account to apply. Some banks you do have to have an account to apply, right? Some banks have a certain amount of time before you can apply. They might have 30 days. They might have 60 days. Some banks out here do 6 months, right? It's just depending on what works best for your sequence, but this is the information that you need to know ahead of time to know whether that bank is going to be a good option for you. Number two, what to bring. Clear business explanation. When I say clear, I mean clear and short, couple sentences. You don't want to get to the banker rambling and rambling and rambling about what your business does. It's an elevator pitch. If the banker needs more information, they will request more information. Business owners who are used to saying what their business does is going to say it in a very short and punctual manner. You're not going to mumble, you're not going to fumble, you're not going to be ums and this and that, right? You're not going to drag it on. It's going to be very clear, very short, and very punctual, because now you've got experience in explaining your business, right? So a clear business explanation. Deposit funds, just like I talked about earlier, when you open up these accounts, take some money to open up to actually deposit into the account. A hack here, if your business is growing and you need to make a deposit and you don't want to be looked at the wrong way because you only got $50 to $100, then tell them, hey, listen, I would love to deposit more funds, but right now I only have $50 to $100 cash on me. Can I just put that in? Can I just put that in here for now, and then I'll come back later to make a deposit? That's going to look a lot better when you're depositing funds in these accounts than saying I only have $50. Then I only have $50. I only have $100. Right? It's about positioning yourself as a qualified or as a qualified applicant. You're going to have your personal identification, just like we talked about earlier, and then you're going to have your entity docs early, that we talked about earlier as well too, the EIN letter, the operating agreement, bylaws, things of that nature. Now, best practices, just like I talked about, these are bankers, these are very busy. They have a lot of conversations on a daily basis, and you got this information so you know how to present yourself. But I'm going to tell you the majority of conversations that bankers have are not conversations like this. There's someone who has no idea. They're trying to figure it out. They don't even know where to begin. They're fumbling through paperwork. And I'm just going to tell you, bankers kind of get a little dragged on or fatigued throughout the day because most people aren't positioning themselves or the way that I'm teaching you how to do here. So the best practice is you want to be short and direct. You want to be long-term focused, right? You want to be short and direct in your explanation, long-term focus in as far as building the relationship. Show up early. If you're late, if you show up on time, you're late, right? Show up early and organize, and make sure that you know how to clearly explain your business without any high risk, right? Very, very important. Banks, as we've talked about here, banks lend based on your risk, right? Now, we've covered a lot of information. I just want to make sure that you guys are still with me. If this has taught you something new today, or if you are finding this valuable, do me a favor and type win in the chat. I just need to make sure everyone's still with me and make sure that everyone's getting some value out of this. If you'll just do me a favor and type win in the chat, and I will get a sip of water. Win in the chat. All right. Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, Marquita. Thank you, Devon. I tremendously appreciate it. There we go. There we go. Some wins in the chat. Awesome. Awesome. Now, we've laid all the foundation, right? We've got a lot of information. Now we're actually going to transition to actually how do we implement all of this information, right? Now, when we talk about products, when we talk about business funding, there are a couple different products, and I want to clarify what these products are and what they are best used for, right? So we are going to talk about credit cards. We're going to talk about business credit cards. Excuse me. We're going to talk about business lines of credit. We're going to talk about revenue-based financing. We're going to talk about the SBA, and we're going to talk about term loans. Now, credit cards. Business credit cards are great for a couple things. They are great for quick access to capital. The type of credit cards that we typically work with most businesses that make the most sense for most businesses are the 0% introductory. 0% business credit cards will typically come somewhere 0% intro for anywhere between 6 to 24 months. So they are good for the 0% introductory process and fast working capital, right? They are easy to get, they're easy to spend. You can carry them around, right? And you also get rewards, right? So that's the business credit card. Yes, that's a business credit card. The business line of credit is great for flexible and quick access to cash. So with a business line of credit, it works kind of like a credit card, but it's easier to transfer funds or wire funds directly from the business line of credit to a bank account, right? So those are the business lines of credit with flexible access. Revenue-based funding. So if someone has some challenges on their credit or they're looking for revenue-based funding, that is fine, that is perfect, but those are really only good for quick cash injections. Something over the next 6 to 12 months, maybe managing a marketing campaign, maybe some payroll, maybe some working capital, things of that nature, right? But it's designed to be a quick cash injection. The SBA, one of my favorite, especially for acquisitions. Those are really good. The SBA, which is the Small Business Administration, they offer loans, lines of credit, things of that nature. They are great for larger and longer term purchases, right? So if you're acquiring a business or you're looking for commercial real estate or different things, the SBA are great options for you, and they are typically more long term. And then you have a business term loan, which is you get approved for X amount of money. There's X amount of payment over X amount of month. That just makes it easier for more of a fixed and predictable process, right? People come to me and they say, hey, I want all of them. I want this, I want that, I want X amount of money. In very short, if you qualify for it, we can fund it. And if you qualify based on the things that we talked about here, you're going to be in a position to qualify for the funding that you're looking for, right? So again, everything we talk about is being able to qualify what you do. Now, I do want to show a couple different examples just because they highlight some of the biggest perspectives of some of the scenarios we work with, right? Because a lot of people come to us, and like I say, where you start is not where you finish. So I've got like 3 really quick case studies. They're like some of my favorite case studies. Some of you, if you've been on here before, some of you may have seen some of these. But if you haven't, then obviously this will be your first time. The thing I always like to clarify, I'm someone who I set the expectations clear every time I speak, right? When it comes to funding, and of all the deals we've done, we've never seen 2 deals the same. So understand every situation is different, and past performances do not guarantee future results. But I do just want to highlight a couple scenarios and some of our favorite case studies, right? So this is Marcus. This is why I talk about Marcus a lot, because he is one of our biggest case studies, especially when it comes to it's not where you start, it's where you finish, right? So Marcus, he was an aspiring entrepreneur. He saw, all about funding online. He was kind of doing what most people do. Hey, I heard you can get funded. I'm submitting applications. I'm getting denied. What's going on? I hear funding is possible, but it ain't working for me, right? And he just didn't understand, right? And so Marcus found us in a masterclass similar to this. Ultimately, he found us. He came to us and he's like, hey, I hear all about funding. I'm submitting applications. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I can't really figure out what's going on, right? Because Marcus didn't get to have a call and really understand how to actually break it down, right? He was just submitting applications, hoping and praying that he got the decision he was looking for instead of actually structuring the data or the information. So ultimately, he came to us. We reviewed his personal credit. He had a couple issues, some outdated addresses, high utilization, some late payments, some of that derogatory information that we talked about, right? And so ultimately, he was being denied by the lenders, right? And he just didn't think funding was an option. We did an audit. We helped him understand where he was. We really helped him point out the exact reasons where he was going wrong, why he was going wrong, why he was actually getting denied. We provided him the resources and the contacts in order to clean up his report, dispute the inaccuracies, lower his utilization, build positive accounts. After he did that, Marcus came back to us, and with a properly clean profile, with a properly structured business, Marcus applied using our one of our funding sequences and contacts, and he was able to get from the current biggest bank in the United States, Chase Bank. He went to one bank. Now, this is not a typical result, right? I do not set the expectation of this, but it's a highlight because he was able, after all he had been through, he was able to go to the current largest bank in the United States, able to get $75,000, which he was able to invest into his detailing business, do a marketing campaign, get some equipment, and actually bring on some staff and some help, all without using his savings when he initially really just thought funding was a myth, right? So I like that case study. That's one of my favorite. The other one right here is if a lot of people just don't really let me see how to compliantly say it. They just may not be aware of how many opportunities are out there for them, right? And so we work with high-level entrepreneurs, right? People who already have relationships. And Michael, this is why I like this one, because Michael, he already had everything together, right? He was running a seven-figure consultancy. He had everything together. He had deposits at banks. He had all these things set up. The only part where he was going wrong is that he just didn't realize how much opportunity was in front of him. So he was working with his bank, but they weren't giving him the funding that he was looking for, right? And so he came on this. We started talking about using multiple banks, and he had just never thought, hey, I've been with this bank or these two banks for 5-10 years. That's all he knew. He didn't think about expanding different options. And these processes don't, they don't just have to work by replacing what you currently have. It's building upon what you currently have. We don't look to replace anything. We want to build in partnership to help the client figure out the best objective for them, right? And so, again, he came to us kind of figuring out, hey, I'm trying to get some funding. My bank's only doing this. How can I position this? And so ultimately, we looked at his profile. We gave him some contacts. And if you look over here to the left, we went to one bank and we got we actually got a little over 300,000, but he only needed 300,000 for the deal that he was looking for. I think he got like 340, 330, 340, but he only ended up accepting 300,000 that he was able to use in his business, and we actually did an acquisition together, right? So I think that was awesome. So just kind of showing some of the things right there. And then the last case study that I like to go over is Eric, because when it comes to a lot of people, but especially before they meet me, is that they kind of get this assumption that debt is bad and that banks are against them, right? And there's good debt and there's bad debt, right? And Eric is really the poster child of someone who really didn't believe in banks, right? He had just gotten misinformation, and he just didn't really understand how to leverage banks, right? They're your best friends, and you can use them as investors when you know how to build a relationship, right? And so Eric, kind of pretty much the same thing here. 10-year entrepreneur, fully self-funded, complete negative perception of banks, right? And so he had never thought or about the idea of using the banks to grow his business. And so ultimately he came to us. We kind of explained how banks are not, your enemy. They're not out to get you. They actually have a lot of products and things and benefits to being able to work with them, especially with entrepreneurs who are used to bootstrapping. And so ultimately we were able to work with Eric. We were able to facilitate his business. He was also looking at like just some of like the major banks. We use a lot of regional banks and things like that in our sequences. Eric was able to go to one of my favorite banks, Key Bank. We were able to get 2 products. So we talked about the multiple products. We were able to get 2 products. He got a $50,000 business line of credit and a $40,000 business credit card using and leveraging the banks. And me personally, I like working with non-believers, right? I like working with non-believers because when you're actually transparent and true, you're able to turn a non-believer to a believer. And when a non-believer becomes your believer, in my experience, they become some of your biggest advocates. Eric is one of the biggest advocates for our services and our education because he didn't really believe it. And then he saw a result, and now he understands the possibilities and all the opportunities, even though he's done great things the last, 10, it's like 11 years now, 10 or for the past 10 years prior to meeting us. Now he was actually able to understand how to actually go through this process. And if you haven't really kind of gathered this up to this point, I want to make something very clear. Funding is a process. Funding is not luck, and it's a system. And it's the process that you've seen us go through today because they followed a proven system and understood that all of the work and all of the organization has to be done before they ever submit that application, which is the same which is the same process you're following now. They had a roadmap. They knew which banks to approach and when. They knew what questions to ask. They knew how to structure their business. And when you know what to do, when you know who to talk to, and you know how to present yourself, funding becomes predictable, not impossible. And this is why we call ourselves the funding playbook, because that is the power of having a step-by-step playbook in order to position yourself for the access to capital. So we've gone over a lot of information. I'm just going to summarize it really quick in 4 quick phases, and then we're going to move on to it. So phase 1, you want to clean and align, right? So you don't want to make any assumptions. You want to get all 3 credit reports. You want to match your name and address everywhere. And if you have any derogatory information, that's fine, but you want to go through a dispute process in order to handle that before you go through the application process. Number 2, or phase 2, is the stabilize and prepare. So you're going to pay down your utilization. You're going to be opening those bank accounts and establishing those relationships. And then you're going to make sure that you prepare all of the documents so that you have them available. Phase 3 is you're going to verify and plan. So this is where you're going to confirm your strongest credit reporting agency. You're going to create a mock or draft and application order. And then you're going to get pre-qualified and speak to a banking relationship manager. Step 4 is the execute and review. Just execute. If you've done all the steps and you followed all the information, just execute, take action. The results are going to give you the final decision, and then you can again adjust based on the data. So you're going to submit the in sequence, you're going to log the outcomes and adjust, and then you are going to plan the next round. So that is really the 4 phases of this process. Now, earlier, we talked about the maximum qualifications to get the maximum funding. Now we're going to talk about a little bit about the credit-based qualifications. Now, to start off, I really hate talking about credit scores. If you haven't really gathered that through this process, I really hate talking about credit scores whenever we are structuring funding deals, because as you can see, it's not really about the scores. It's really about the data that makes up the scores. And sometimes those scores can be, can give you false expectations. But generally speaking, if you are looking at a credit score in order to see what you qualify for funding, typically for credit-based qualifications, generally speaking, you do want a 680 plus personal credit score across the board. You want at least 1 major credit card, with it being an issuer like Visa, MasterCard, American Express, or Discover, right? You want some accounts with the bigger companies. You want at least 1 credit card with a year old with a $2,000 limit. No derogatory remarks. If you've had some late payments in the past, at very minimal, you really don't want any late payments within the last 12 months. Ideally, no late payments within the last 24 months or 2 years. No more than 3 new inquiries within the last 6 to 12 months. You want a 2+ year average age history. I know we're talking about business funding. Sometimes clients will need to do personal funding. But when we're talking about business funding, in my experience, AUs or authorized users do not help business funding. They will absolutely help you in the personal funding process. But when you are transitioning to business funding, banks want to see what you have in your personal name and what you have been actually able to manage, whether on the personal name or the business. No new accounts within the last 6 to 12 months, minimally within the last 3. It's just to understand, hey, if you start to break some of these parameters, it's not to say that you won't get funded. It's just that we have to realign the expectations for what you would actually qualify for, right? And then the utilization is 1 to 30% utilization. Now, what do you actually need to apply? Basic details about you and your business. You do need to be able to verify you and your business. There are document-based funding programs or no document-based funding programs. Generally speaking, most people assume that anytime you're looking for funding, they're going to ask for 1 million financial docs and everything. Not necessarily true. Certain banks do vary. The simplistic part here is that the better your credit, the less they have to verify. The more challenging your credit, the more they have to verify, right? So they do have document funding programs versus no document funding based programs based on the credit. There are multiple options to choose. And yes, we do talk a lot. I talk a lot about credit-based financing, but there are 3 C's when it comes to looking for access to capital. You can do credit-based financing, which is based on the profile of your personal or business credit report, the cash flow of either your personal or the business, or collateral, right? So some clients we've been able to find like stock portfolios, commodities, real estate portfolios, things of that nature, leveraging things as collateral, right? Now, we've covered a lot. I've covered it from the very beginning all the way to here to help you understand what you actually need to do to position yourself for funding. So the biggest question I get is, hey, Dorsey, that was great, but what's next? What do I actually do, right? And there's really, you have two options. Number one, you can take what you learned today and go and do it yourself. And if you do, you'll be in a much better position than 99% of people out there who are applying for funding. If you do that, I highly appreciate that because you took action. Just do me a favor, tag me, let me know what you did and the results that you got. Or you can let our team actually guide you through every step of the way. So when you work with our team, we cover everything for you that we talked about here. So we do the personalized audit. We create the custom funding sequence. We have the expert strategy. We have the structure. We have the support, and you get access to our proven network and resources. Either way, regardless of what option you choose, the most important part is that you have a roadmap. The only question that you have to ask is how fast do you want to move and how fast do you want to execute in order to get the results that you're looking for. Now, the next question I get is, hey, Dorsey, man, I would love to work with you, but man, I'm sure it's going to cost me thousands of dollars to even, have a conversation with you and your team. The benefit about our organization is that we believe in generating the results and then being compensated for the results that we generate, right? So we don't believe in overpromising. We don't believe in over-delivering. We don't believe in retainer fees or, anything of that nature. So the way that we operate is we are a performance-based organization. So what that means is we don't charge anything up front and we take all the risk. We invest all the time, we invest all the resources, we invest all the staffing in order to deliver the results. Now, the way that we work is we put in a lot of effort. As you can see, there's a lot of intellectual property. There's a lot of process, a lot of things that have to be done in order to position yourself and get the access to capital that you're looking for. And so we'll do all of that for you. The only thing we ask is just for a small tip on our services. So the way that we work is as a performance-based organization. We do everything up front. We facilitate the results. And the way that we work is we charge a 10% commission of the amount that we actually service to get you funded. Now, again, I'm very transparent. I like to set the proper expectations. So some people do hear 10% and they're like, hey, that's too high. But I just wanted to clarify here what that actually really means. It means that there's no guesswork, there's no retainers, ultimately there's no risk. If we don't perform, we obviously do not get paid, whether we invest 20 hours, 50 hours, or a couple hundred hours in order to facilitate the deal. You get a proven process, expert support, and real banking relationships, and ultimately you save time, you avoid all of the costly mistakes that I talked about throughout this process, and you walk into funding with confidence. The reality is you're not paying for a maybe, you're investing into strategy, you're investing into results and momentum only after the results are actually delivered, right? So you get access to the funding first, and then that's when we actually fully get compensated on our effort, right? So what we're going to do is Christina is going to have a link, or 7 Ways is going to have a link. They're going to put that link in the chat. All you have to do, it's going to take you about a 20 or 30-second form to fill out. You're going to click that link. You're going to complete that form. When you do that, you are going to have the opportunity to schedule one-on-one with someone from our team to go over everything and help you walk through the intake process. This is not something where you kind of have to figure this out on your own. You're going to work one-on-one, like I said, with someone from our team from the beginning stages through the end stages, right? Regardless of whatever we have to do. So 7 Ways is going to drop that link in the chat, and then all you will have to do is take a couple seconds to fill that out. Now, next steps, I want to clarify here. Again, I want to make sure everything is clear for you. I want to make sure that you have the best experience possible whenever working with us. So what's going to happen? You're going to have a link. You're going to choose the time that works best for you based on availability of our team, and you're going to book your appointment, right? So you're going to put in your information. On the next page, you're going to choose a calendar. You're going to be scheduled one-on-one. and you're going to get some confirmations. So when you book that appointment, you're going to get some email confirmations and you're going to get some text confirmations. Now, in the email, there's some emails and there's some videos and some information that I recorded that I would like you to see before sitting down and speaking with someone on our team. So very important. We send a lot of emails. It should go to your main inbox. However, sometimes based on settings or whatever the case may be, you may need to check your spam or your promotional email folder immediately after booking. It will show up there within a couple seconds, right? So immediately after booking, make sure that you review that information, make sure that you star that email, and make sure that you watch those couple short videos because it's going to walk you and prepare you for the whole process. Now, please note a couple things. We are primarily a text-based support team. So yes, the same number that those texts and your confirmations come through, you can respond to that number and someone from our team will be able to communicate with you if you have any questions or if you need any assistance. Now, understand, we service a lot of clients. Responses, please do not expect an immediate response. Responses can take 3 to 24 business hours or sooner, right? Sometimes you may get a response within, we have a lot of staff. So sometimes you may get a response shorter than 3 hours. However, I would rather tell you prepare for 3 to 24 and you get a response within an hour or two rather than tell you, that you're going to get an immediate response. So please do not go into this expectation that you are going to get an immediate response. Now, what you're scheduling is an intake call because we have to figure out the first steps to get you funded. We don't know where you are. So we have to walk you through the personal and business information to help you understand what you qualify for and ultimately figure out your first steps to get funded. So you're booking the intake call, and there's a couple things that are going to be best practice. The call is scheduled for a 30-minute Zoom. No, we cannot do it on Google Meets. No, we will not do it over the phone. It must be on Zoom, and you must show up to your appointment, right? You must show up on time. If you have an appointment scheduled at 3 p.m. Eastern, you need to be there at 3 p.m. Eastern. If you are late, our team runs a very tight calendar. This is a business. We run a very large organization. If you are more than 3 minutes late to your appointment, 3 to 5 minutes late to your appointment, you will have to reschedule. No, we will not make an exception, right? So you must show up on time. We run a professional business. We expect you to operate as a professional business, right? You must be at a computer. There's a lot of technicals, right? We don't want you to be on a phone. You must be at a computer. If you don't have one, you can borrow one from a friend, from a colleague, or public libraries are free, right? So you must be at a computer. And yes, we do need your personal and business information. We cannot pre-qualify you based on what you say you have. Again, we have to see the exact information and numbers and dates that are reporting for us to make the best decision, right? So you need to have all of your personal and business information ready. I'm not going to break that down in detail because I've covered a lot of it here, but if you watch the emails or the videos that are in your email, I personally break all of those down for you and set all of those expectations so that you know what you need prepared before going to the meeting, right? The next thing is, there we go. The next thing is I was trying to get over to Q&A, but it looks like my presentation just closed. So ultimately, that was the last part. For some reason, it won't go to my actual last page. But ultimately, now I do have a couple minutes for Q&A. I've got, depending on how many questions there are, I do have a hard stop at 2:10 Eastern. So I do have a couple minutes, about 17 minutes if you do have some questions. The first thing I like to clarify, no question is a dumb question, right? Please, while I'm here, get all of the questions answered so that we
Real
can get
quick. My name is Vivian, and thanks for all the information. So my question is, how many years of business credit do you require business taxes?
So on the initial process, on the initial intake, no, you don't have to have all of those, all of your business taxes. On that intake call, it's really helping us understand where you are. Now, depending on how much funding you're looking for, or depending on the information on that process, then the taxes may come into consideration depending on the bank. Depending on the bank, every bank is going to differ. Some banks want the last year, some banks want the last 2 years, some banks want like the last three. But that's really just a depend situation based on what you're looking for and also what you're comfortable with.
Okay. So if you can meet that, obviously you can get denied for that.
Not necessarily. We've had, to clarify, we've had a lot of clients go through and get access to, you know, 50, 100,000, $200,000 in funding if they qualify on the credit without putting any financial documentation, no tax returns, no bank statements, no pay stubs, things of that nature. But it just depends on where you qualify at and how much funding you're actually looking for. I would tell you that
That's
if
right.
you're looking for anything over 300,000, most times there's going to need some kind of documentation to go along with that, whether it be bank
Okay.
statements, tax returns, things of that nature. But it's not necessarily a requirement, generally speaking.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course. And then just to make this just a little organized, if there should be at the bottom, there will be a react button. Whenever you click that react button, there is a raise hand feature. If you'll do me a favor, if you do have a question, just click on that just so that I can click that in order, and then I will ask you to chime in as I see them. I do see Stacy Petty. If you'll go ahead and unmute yourself, and you can ask whatever question you were looking for. Oh, looks like they actually lowered their hand.
I apologize. I'm sorry. I was trying to find the mute button.
There we go. Okay.
First of all, I want to say thank you. Wonderful presentation, just amazing. So I do have a few questions, but I'll make them quick. Hopefully other people might have some of these. But first one is, does it matter if you own your LLC or if the trust owns the LLC to get funding? Is there a preference?
It is, so that's going to go, it's fine if the trust owns it, but it's going to go back to some of those documents I was talking about earlier with the operating agreement and the bylaws. It's always going to be more streamlined if you own the business that you're doing, just because you're going to be easier to verify. But you can do it with the trust controlling it, but the information has to be outlined that you are an authorized applicant, either in your operating agreement if it's an LLC, or the bylaws if it's a corporation.
Okay. And then with a corporation versus an LLC, is there a preference? I was reading somewhere where corporations tend to get funded better, I guess, than an LLC, but any thoughts on that?
So, loaded question. You're going to get a couple different answers based on who you talk to. I would tell you if it's a low amount of funding. So what I consider low is anything really under 200,000. It's kind of, you really kind of get to pick and choose. Now, when it's over that, you have to understand what corporations are structured for versus an LLC. A corporation structure is eventually built to build a very large organization, have stakeholders, you know, things of that nature, shareholders, stakeholders. So when you're
Mhm.
looking for higher limits of capital, because banks are perceiving the corporation to go out and, you know, raise capital, stakeholders, and, you know, shareholders, things of that nature. If it's over like 200,000, yes, I would typically say corporations are going to be better. But in the beginning, it's, you know, it's not necessarily it's more just based on preference.
Okay. And then my last question is personal guarantee. So if you have an LLC, and maybe this is back to the LLC versus corporation, but this process you're talking about, is this going to help us build business on the build credit, I'm sorry, on the business side, or are we still talking about 50,000, 100,000 or more based on a personal guarantee as well?
So two-part process, or let me clarify. Let me answer this question. Then if I don't answer it, obviously you can clarify. So PG versus business credit and reporting business credit. So the business, every client is going to be different, right? Ideally, we want to get you business funding that does report to business credit. Now, sometimes people don't want the funding to report to the personal or the business credit. So that's what we call ghost money. Depending on the client situation, they might want a different objective, right? Now, what we like to do is get people funding, even if they are leveraging a PG, in order to report and build to the personal credit, because eventually that personal credit or that business credit profile will be strong enough to graduate what's called corporate credit. Corporate credit is what most people are looking for when they are looking just for EIN only funding, but generally speaking, most people don't qualify for corporate credit. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
It does make sense. So if you have a business, you're just, trying to build that credit up. Maybe you've had the business a few years, you're not really generating any income from it, but now you're looking to grow it and get funding. Do you think that starting process, are you going to have to use a personal guarantee to get those funds?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
If you want access to real business funding. Now, in full transparency, because somebody might see it and be like, oh, Dorsey didn't mention this. You can go the long way, what you call a long way, which are accounts like net 30s, which I know
Mhm.
7ways is giving you all kind of resources like vendor accounts. You can go that way. The reality is, though, is in the funding realm, they lend a lot on what is called comparable credit, right? So when you're getting these vendor accounts, a lot of these startup vendor accounts, they might be EIN only, but if you notice, you're going to get $500 limits, $1,000 limits, etc. So when you're looking for lending, they're going to say, okay, what do you currently have? And when if they see $500,000 limits, then they can only base their lending based on what you've proven that you can do. Now, the reason we talk about leveraging personal credit for business funding, because you can access business funding that reports separately from the personal and ideally builds business credit, but you can get higher limits where you can start off with 10, 20, $50,000, etc., and fast track that process for what we call comparable limits.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Of course, you're very welcome. All right, the next hand that I see is Tyrone TTEE. You can go ahead and
That's
unmute.
trustee. That's trustee family. How you doing, brother?
Gotcha. I'm good. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Once again, I just wanted to shout out you. I've been around for a minute, and you do a great job. I like how you said you simplified the situation. So, but my one question would be, of course, is when we talk about all that you said, you're able to what we use build the foundation, like if nobody did, just somebody fresh, right? That's
Right.
how long would it take an individual who don't have none of that, that just started the LLC, really don't have real bank experience or credit like that? How long is that time frame?
So let me clarify, because credit like that means a couple of different things to different people. So do you
Uh-huh.
currently have any like credit cards at all?
Yeah, I have one, but I'm an authorized user from
Okay,
on
authorized.
my son, on
Okay,
my son's stuff.
authorized user. What about like auto loans? Do you have previous like auto loans, any kind of cash loans, mortgage, anything like that?
Nah, I have nothing in my name now.
Okay, understood. So in that phase, what you would be in is what's called a credit building phase. And if you're in the
Okay.
credit building phase, it's not that you have bad credit, it's just that you don't have any credit. So
Right.
what you have to do in the credit building phase is you're going to have to go out and add new accounts reporting to your personal credit. Now, anytime that you have to add new accounts, especially from a credit building phase, I would tell you 6 months minimal,
Okay.
ideally 12 months, because you need to add those accounts and then you need to let them age a little bit. Just kind of how I was talking about through this process. You don't just want to add a bunch of new accounts and then go and apply for a bunch of new. You want to add new accounts, let them age a little bit, show the history. And then I would say 6 to 12 months later, what I would tell you to do, in my opinion, would be to add anywhere between like 3 to 5 what we call credit builder accounts. There's secured credit cards. There's all kind of information for credit builders, or you can go through the intake
Right.
process. We can advise you on this. Um, You would do credit builder accounts, 3 to 5 credit builder accounts, let them age for 6 to 12 months. And then what I would tell you to do is go through a personal funding process first. So go through a personal funding process to add some good credit cards from American Express, Visa, MasterCard, something of that nature. Now, the same time while you're doing that, I would tell you to go ahead and be proactively and simultaneously getting your business bank account set up, getting those things in motion, talking about the things that we talked about, because let's say it's 6 months from now, let's say it's 12 months from now. If you've got those accounts open for a year, you've got those histories, you got those accounts. Now, by the time your credit is in place, you don't have to wait to go and season these accounts. You can just, hey, I've had these accounts for the last 6 to 12 months. Now I got the credit. Now I'm in a position where I can actually apply. So you're able to do that without delaying the process, and you can be proactive in both instead of doing one and then the other. That would be my opinion.
No, I appreciate that. And to piggyback on that, if I do you, I know you said you're able to advise on that situation, but do y'all have a personal program that solidifies me going through these different steps through this year? You know, because obviously I can't just sign up with you and say, hey, I want to get 300,000 for my business. Yeah, I'm saying I can't do that. I mean, so do you have the program where, you know what I'm saying, y'all walk individuals through that, you know, that whole process and the steps that you just spoke of?
Yeah, so we have like educational resources that
Okay.
outline all of that for you. So it has links to everything in there. It has the explanation for everything. It has like a video, all of that explaining how you actually go through that process. And then of course,
All
if
right,
you have any questions, we have communities and the team as well.
no, I appreciate that, fam, because it looked like I just got to start all over. You know what I mean? Because I went for years not doing nothing and taking everything out my name, not knowing how I was damaging myself more than, you know, helping myself. So, you know, especially from what you shared and how you shared it. So, but one question real quick. Who is Key Bank? I've never heard of them. Where they at?
They're more up in like the northeast, and a little bit out like Midwest. So banks like Pennsylvania, Colorado, places like that. So
All right.
Key Bank is what we call a regional bank. They're not available in
All
all states.
states. Okay.
Yeah, there's national banks that are like
Right.
nationwide. Then there's regional banks that only serve what is called a certain
Right.
banking footprint, which is just in like
Hmm.
certain states. And then they have like so regional banks will typically cover like multiple states, and then you have community banks that are inside of a certain state, and they might only serve like certain counties or maybe like just that state.
Great job, brother. I ain't gonna keep you. God bless you, brother. Have a great day.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Tyrone. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for showing up.
Yes, sir.
All right. Do we have to set up the LLC first before contacting your company? So question in the chat was, do we have to set up the LLC first before contacting your company? No, you do not. Actually, that's one of the services that we offer is entity setup, just in case you don't know where to go. So you do not have to have anything set up before coming to us. This is what I tell everyone every time, regardless of whether you think you're ready now, whether you don't think you're ready now, whether this might be a possibility. This is what I tell people. Don't make any assumption. Go through the complimentary audit. Let us understand where we are. I promise you the team is amazing. They're going to be able to figure out what's going on, and then we can advise you from there, because the only guarantee that I can make you throughout this whole process is once we see what's going on, we can give you a clear game plan of, hey, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, and these are the time frames that we want to look at getting it done. So that's the last thing that I would really leave you guys with, is don't make any assumption, and let's figure out again what your first step is. Everybody's first step is different. Somebody's first step might be getting funded next week. Somebody might be waiting 30 to 90 days. Sometimes people have to wait some time, right? Like Marcus, sometimes people gotta give a little bit of time. They might have to go through a process for a couple months in order to do so. Do you have options? So Ed asked in the chat, Do you have options for business grants or loans? Most of what we do is credit-based financing. Let me see how to put this. Grants is not our specialty. No, there are resources that we have if someone is looking for grants. And there are certain businesses that, because we do have relationships with banks, sometimes banks let us know that they do have certain grant programs that clients can, take advantage of. But primarily we are either credit-based financing or cash flow revenue-based financing. To answer that question. And then Zoom user said, how do we get the complimentary audit? What I'll do is I saw Ivy put in the chat. I'm just going to copy and paste it, put it back in the chat. Right now, I just put it back in there. You'll just use that link. You just click on that link in the chat. Once you click on that link, take you like 20 or 30 seconds, just some very basic information. There's like a 2-minute video explaining what the process is. Some very short information, takes you like 20 or 30 seconds to fill it out. And then on that next form, you will be able to schedule with our team. With that being said, I have run out of time. I hope that this was extremely valuable. I appreciate all of your time. Christina, 7 Ways, you run a phenomenal community. Always tremendously appreciative of everything, everything you do have going on. Excited, for your growth over the years as well, too. So I appreciate you guys. Please go ahead, fill out the form, and I would love, to work with you, our team, whatever the case may be. So I appreciate you guys. You guys have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you,
God bless
Dorsey.
you, brother.
Appreciate
care.
you coming and pouring into the community. You have a
Thank
blessed
you.
Well,
Thank
thank you.
Very well. Bye.
All right, all right. That was great. What did you guys think about that session, you guys?
It was lovely, sis. You know what it is. You do great work. You got good people on
Wonderful.
your
Very
squad.
informative.
That was
Yes, you
great.
got great people on your squad. It takes a
Yes,
team, just like a village, to raise
it
a
does.
child. So
Yes, it does.
you got a good squad, family. I appreciate you. That's why I love you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate you too. Appreciate everyone who's on the call. So I do want to continue on with the Q&A session. So does anybody have any questions for me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, who is that? I can't see who's speaking.
Vivian.
Hi, Vivian. How are
Hi.
you?
I'm good. Yourself?
I'm wonderful. Nice to see you.
Yeah, me too. So, I've been coming in and out of the meeting, at least, throughout the whole week. Unfortunately, I do see patients, so I really couldn't commit a lot of time to this program. And I know you're providing a lot of very useful information. So I'm just wondering, will I have access to those recordings, or do we have access to the recordings?
Absolutely, yes. So if you log into the portal, you will have access to the recording. So I'm going to show you what it looks like. Let me just pull it up really quickly, okay?
Okay.
One second here. Mm. Hmm. One second.
Okay.
Mm. So once you get access to the online portal, Vivian, do you have access to the online portal? Vivian, are you there? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I'm not sure. I think we lost Vivian. Or I don't know if you're on mute. Okay, well, anyways, so for those of you guys who are wanting to know how to access the recordings, you do have to log into the portal. So you do have your login credentials in your email. Once you log in, you will see two options. One says workshop training recordings, the other one says Wealthy Trusty Program. So you have to choose the one that says workshop training recordings. Once you choose that option, then it'll bring you to this screen that you see here. So what you'll do is automatically you'll have access to all of the recordings here. And so if, as you can see, you get access to every single workshop that we've ever done. So you have 2 years worth of workshops here. So the latest one is going to be on the top and you're going to see the dates. So November 17th to November 21st. And you have day 1, day 2, day 3. And then 1 hour after we're done with day 4, then they're going to upload it. So you just click on it and then you're able to video here.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
You're welcome, Ms. Vivian. All right, next we have Tyrone. And then I will also check in the chat to see if you guys have any questions.
Yes, family. Once again, you know how much I love you and you the great job you do. The one question I have for you though, as far as what you did today, is it the bylaws as well as all that you had transpired with the meetings? Um, you had established, if I'm not mistaken, all three of our trusts need that.
Correct.
The minutes.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
okay,
You need
that's
to establish a meeting for all of your entities, all of your trusts, correct?
and I do know from each trust that we have put together that each one of them have we put our own time frame on there, whether we have a monthly meeting, yearly or bi-yearly. Whatever. I mean, you're supposed to have a meeting at least once a year, right? If I'm not mistaken.
The minimum, so if you set up your trust and you said that the minimum amount of meetings is annually or one, then yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure because, of course, I've been really just concentrating on the faith-based one, and so uh, hearing you go back over the other two has really caught my attention on trying to go back to the little details that I have not done, you know what I'm saying, with my family trust and then the business trust. So I just wanted to make sure because I need to catch up with that and make sure that I have all of that and then separating it, making sure that I have the meetings in place and the time frame because that's all important too. So I appreciate that, family. Great job once again. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're so welcome. Thank you, Tyrone. I appreciate you. All right, next we have Miss Dina. Hi, Miss Dina. And so someone had asked if they have lifetime access to the portal. Yes, you do have lifetime access.
That's right, and I'm so glad.
Yeah, I know, right? Man.
Okay, Kakita, I want to show you the book. I
Oh my
finished the book.
gosh.
You told us a trust can write a book, so I
Yes.
wrote the book. The triplets have a book now, and so
Oh,
I'm promoting my book. It's called Love Pains, and so here's my question to you. I want to do it online. If I do the bookstore and everything online, do I still need a EIN?
so the trust already has an EIN.
Uh-huh.
So you should be able to use the trust EIN for your account.
Okay, so I'll just do it
For the trust.
through the trust. So okay, then which I'm doing it through which trust though? The business
Uh,
one?
yeah, you should
Which
do it through business.
through the business trust. Okay. That was it. Oh yeah, thank you
Yeah.
all and congratulations. Thank you. It's Christina. We gotta thank Christina. That's the only reason why I came to fruition. She encouraged me. I did it. And so, yes, the triplets now have a book and I'm promoting it. And I will continue to update you on how well we're doing. Thank you again for all of your help.
Thank you, Ms. Dina. Ms. Dina, do you have a link? The minute that you get a link, let us know and we'll blast it to the community. So those community members that want to support you on your book are able to do so.
I
You have,
certainly will. Certainly will.
yes, yes, yes. Well, you just let us know. So just put the information in the chat, okay, Ms. Dina, so that
Okay.
everyone who is looking to grab a copy of the book is able to do so.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank
Thank
you for
you.
continue on. Yes.
Congratulations. I'm so happy for you. Like that is such
Yeah,
a
so
blessing.
definitely for you. You wrote a book. You helped write a book.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Be
you.
blessed.
You too, beautiful. Thank you. All right, let's see here. Next, Taisha said, I would like to confirm if it's necessary for the LLC to sit in the holding company and the holding company is owned by the trust, or should the trust own the LLC company directly? So, both structures are fine. It just depends on how you want to do it. So, if you already have an existing holding company, then you don't have to dissolve it. You can have the trust own the holding company and the holding company own the LLC. And from start to finish, how long is the process to create the family business and ministry? So it just depends on your availability. So I have seen people set it up in one day. So the speed is relative. So it just depends on you and how much time you're dedicating towards your training and actually setting up your trust. So typically, what people will do it in 1 to 2 weeks. I've seen people do it in a month. So it really varies. Everybody's saying congratulations. Add a link in the chat. Yes, so we could support you, Miss Dina. Yes, yes, yes. And then Miss Dina, you're in the Telegram chat, right? You can put it in the Telegram chat as well for all of
Okay.
us who are there.
Okay. I just
Um,
gotta figure out the right link so I make sure everything is correct. So there's no
yeah.
mistakes. This is the first time. This is my
Yeah.
baby and I want to get it right.
Beautiful. I love that. Yes, congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Giovanna says, can I get the meeting minutes in the portal? Yes, they're under the resources. So when you log into the portal, you go to Wealthy Trustee Program, you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you're going to see it says resources, and then you'll be able to access the board meeting template. Are the EINs that we apply for the trust just for banking purposes? So primarily the reason is for banking purposes. Now you can use it for any and all other purposes. So for example, when you go to file taxes for the trust, you're going to have to provide your EIN. So now that you have an EIN, you're going to have to provide it every single time that it is requested of you. The grantor and the trustee is um the grantor and the trustee, is it true that they cannot be related? So the grantor and the trustee, they can be related. They just cannot have the type of relationship that is subordinate. So the next question is, in the same process of getting the business EIN and family, trust. So yes, the business EIN and the family trust EIN is the same exact process. Identical. There's nothing different. So tomorrow I will show you how to obtain the family trust, and we'll focus on a lot of things dealing with the family trust tomorrow. Um, all right. And Mona said that she's enrolled and is having challenges getting in touch with someone. So, can you send us an email? Um, you can email me, and you can email my assistant. Stacy has a question. Hey, Stacy. Info. Um, I cannot hear you. Stacy, do you have a question?
I'm so sorry. I keep struggling with this mute button. Um,
Okay.
I do. So my question was with funding. I know, Mr. Dorsey we chatted a little bit about the LLCs and the trust owning it. Is there special verbiage that we need to put inside the LLC, what is it, articles that will allow us to have our trust own it so that there's no issues when it comes to funding?
Any special I'm sorry, I kind of missed part of it. Any special verbiage that,
That we need to include in our LLC articles of incorporation to allow the trust to own it.
no, not the articles of incorporation, no. So all of the verbiage needs to go into the operating agreement of the LLC. So the articles of organization is where you're going to list the trust as the authorized member.
Okay. And as far as like that full process, is that something that is easy just to find online, like kind of how to do that? Or is that something that you go over or maybe I missed?
Yeah, I'm gonna go over it tomorrow.
Oh, perfect. Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
Yeah, so yeah, and you'll see the verbiage that we use too. So we are actually going to execute a business purchase agreement. So I think that that's what you're trying to aim towards. So I'll show you those
Yeah.
steps. Mm-hmm.
And do you also, because I think I remember you mentioning, Christina, a partnership agreement also between like the LLC and the trust. Is that anything that you ever do or recommend if you're trying to get funding or just in general?
Yeah, so it just depends on how you operate it. So like
Is there
everybody.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's not required to have any type of partnership agreement unless you're doing something unique. So for example, if like the LLC is like managing an asset that belongs to the trust.
Mhm. Like
Yeah.
property?
Yep.
Okay. All right. I was just curious about that. Like, is there a scenario that you would encourage us to have a partnership with your trust if you're doing business? Um, is that anything you can share maybe tomorrow if that's a strategy that you're using, like how we would leverage that if, because I have real estate, trying to set it up also where we get funding and the real estate is purchased by the LLC, but then transferred into the trust and then managed by another LLC. So just curious if that's anything that we need to look at as far as structuring ourselves, setting up a partnership with um, the trust. So
So
I don't know.
you
I
do
just,
not,
yeah.
yeah. So you don't have to have a partnership between the trust and the LLC because the trust owns the LLC, right? So
Okay.
the trust is the owner. The trust is not a partner.
No, I mean you specifically, not, never mind.
You so
Maybe I
you're
misunderstood. Yeah,
Okay, so
maybe I
oh,
misunderstood it. Yeah, so that's okay because it sounds like maybe I misunderstood the statement, so I don't want to go off on a tangent. So that's okay.
we can talk about it tomorrow
Okay,
when we
sounds
when
good.
when we go through the when we go through like the articles and stuff.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next we have Stanley.
Thank you. Just to clarify, is it a case where the trust can directly apply for business funding?
Yes. So Dorsey said that a trust can directly have can establish credit. And the trust can get any and all forms of funding. There's no limitations. It's just that they ask for more paperwork, and then you are potentially pulling the trust into the public when you establish well, not potentially. If you establish business credit for a business trust, you are creating a public record for the trust.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. You're welcome. Next we have Reba. Best to purchase. Reba, you're still on mute. I cannot hear you. All right, next we have Jen.
Hi, Christina. Did you say Jen?
Yep, I sure did.
Yeah.
Hey, Jen, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Wonderful.
Good. I feel like a newbie every time I try to get on these different online formats, trying to figure out how to turn on my camera and how to mute it. Everybody's different.
That's funny.
Quick question for you. So I submitted the form 8822 to change the responsible party for the EIN for both my business trust and my family trust to the grantor. So I accidentally put it under my name, and I submitted the form to change the responsible party to change it to the grantor. And I got a letter back from the IRS stating that I need to complete Form 56, which is let me look at that form real quick. I was just looking at it. It says notice concerning fiduciary relationship is what this form is for.
Okay. So it sounds like they just want you to identify yourself as the trustee. So on the 8822, all you identified was who the responsible party was. You went and put their name on there, or they put their name and information on there.
They put their name and information on there.
Okay, so you just have to identify yourself as the fiduciary.
As the trustee? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So then I do have to resubmit the 882 and now this new 56 form. Okay, that's the way I read the 56 form, as the concerning, meaning it's the trustee, myself as the trustee will be handling all fiduciary decisions in the trust.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to confirm.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. All
Hello,
right.
it's Reba. I couldn't get unmuted.
Oh, not a problem. How are you, Reba?
I'm fine. So my question is, okay, when you say where the trust is domiciled, is that where the address?
That's
No,
that's
the state of
correct.
address. Okay, so
Yeah.
if I wanted, if I have my family trust in Delaware and I have a Delaware address, is it difficult for me to open a bank account in Texas?
It depends on the bank.
Okay. And so, okay, got that. So wherever, and you already said that we can choose, like I can choose 3 different states for the 3 different trusts. That's fine. Just as long as I'm able to get the bank to open the account.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
You are so welcome. All right, and let me see if there's any other questions. So somebody was asking about qualifications for a trustee. So there is a section inside of the trust where we had discussed, when you are appointing a trustee, what criteria you should go by. So if you want to be able to review that, you can. And if you're talking about anything state specific, those are referencing a statutory trust. And let's see, when purchasing and making installments, is it best to purchase from the LLC? And the deed to the trust to purchase from the trust for the business, which is the best protection. I'm not sure what you're purchasing, but if it is an asset and you want to protect the asset, then it is best for the asset to be held in the trust. But it depends on how you qualify to purchase the asset. So maybe the LLC needs to qualify to purchase the asset, and then after that, then you transfer the asset into the trust. So that might have to be a possibility, but overall, the ownership of the asset should be in the trust. All right, guys, so we are all done. So your homework for today is for you guys to be able to book a call with Brian Dorsey and his team so that you can see the next steps regarding OPM, which is getting the funding that you need and leveraging the bank's money. Also finalize your asset inventory list, because tomorrow we're going to focus on transferring assets. And then we are going to meet here tomorrow on Zoom from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So 1 hour before our Zoom, you are going to receive the email with the link and the resources and templates that you're going to need for tomorrow. So tomorrow we're going to focus on asset protection. So we are going to be reviewing how to transfer your home, your vehicles, and your businesses into the trust. And then we have our educator who's going to come in and teach you guys about infinite banking. So without further ado, you guys have a beautiful rest of your Thursday.
Christina,
And I will
leave, can you have Ivy or yourself call me? This is Miss Debbie, just to get, things straightened out, because I either need your help or support, or it's just not showing up.
Yeah, so my team actually attempted to call. I'm not sure if you have a call blocker, but they showed me the screenshots. So they
Maybe that's why my sound went
tried.
out. But after class would be more convenient, because I would have missed, a lot of information had they called me during class. So if you can have them give me a call, maybe now
Yeah.
after class.
Yeah, Miss
That would
Debbie,
be
I have a question, Miss Debbie. Do you have a call blocker feature that's activated on your phone? Because our calls are not going through.
And not to my understanding, I could call Ari, after class if she would just pick up. But I don't have a blocker on my phone, or I have not blocked you all out, not to my understanding.
Okay, so my COO, she attempted to call several times and the call's not going through. Usually we have this issue if the person has a call block feature that is activated on their phone line or on their phone. So you can give us a call. Ivy is going to be able to answer the call and we'll be able to go from there, okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a great
Bye.
day.
Thank you,
You too.
Christina.
Bye,
Bye. Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye.
Bye, family.
Bye, guys.